Hello, welcome to this video, and the video today is all about reading and books, and obviously within that we're going to think about reading books as well. Before I begin, I just want to say, let's think about the primary reason we teach children to read in the first place. It's a gift that teachers love to help children receive. The gift of reading is all about nurturing a love of books. We want children to be avid readers, fluent readers, and more than anything, we want them to be readers who just can't get enough of books. Now, this isn't just for academic reasons. Yes, it will open the door to all subjects and all areas of any curriculum, but it's also brilliant for their mental health. In a world where everything is crazy and it's all running at super speed, there's nothing more enjoyable for me than sitting down and switching off with a good book. And if we can give that gift to children, then my goodness, is our job worth doing. So before I begin on the importance of reading and teaching children to read, and within that knowing what books we should be using, I want to take us back to that core reason we're doing it in the first place: to nurture a love of books. Yes, there are lots of elements to the teaching of reading that are not just phonics. I can't believe I've said those words as the phonics queen, my goodness. But in reality, we know that reading is not just about phonics. And whilst we're thinking of phonics in those early stages of reading, and that might be 4, 5, 6, 7, it might be older Key Stage 4 children who've not yet been given the gift of reading. Whilst we're working with those early readers, we need to make sure that whilst we're focusing on those essential skills to be able to read, we also nurture a love of reading alongside that. So the books we think about when we're thinking about teaching and rehearsal of phonics are not going to be the same books that we think about when we're nurturing that love of books. So I hear lots of people say, but phonetically decodable books are boring. They may not be the best read you're ever going to have, but they are crucial and they are essential. But so too are books that are going to make them excited about reading. So we're not just going down this one-dimensional path of only teaching reading via phonics. There are lots of other elements that come into it too. But first of all, let's think about how important phonics is to the teaching of reading, because without the ability to decode, they are not going to be as good a reader as they could be. Now, I keep seeing lots of debates about whether phonics is for everybody, and yes, we do have children who learn to read words by sight, when they look at words and they have a really good photographic memory and can recognise words by sight that they've seen lots and lots, and especially when they've had lots of books shared with them. However, this is going to be limiting if this is the only strategy we use when we are teaching children to read, and that's why we know that phonics is good for the majority of children. There will always be exceptions to the rule, but that's the case with any strategy, any teaching strategy, because all humans are incredibly complex and we're all different. But for the vast majority of people, teaching children to read via phonics is by far the easiest, simplest, and most effective, quickest way of teaching children to become proficient readers. So phonics books are essential for that. Decoding is an essential skill. Let's have a look at some analogies to exemplify that a little bit further. So when we're teaching children to swim, we want them to love to swim for those physical, again, mental health benefits, and so that they are safe within water. But that does not mean that we are only going to teach them the fun stuff where they can splash and jump around. We also have to teach them how to be safe in the water, how to be able to breathe when they are swimming so that they can swim for long distances. Those are the skills that are considered a little bit boring, but it doesn't mean they're not essential. So whilst children are learning to swim, yes, they need to have a fun element to keep them engaged, engrossed and wanting to do this, but they also have to learn those basic skills too. When you are learning to drive, lots of people love going for a drive in the countryside, but that doesn't mean you start to drive and therefore you just go and do all the fun stuff. You have to be able to do those boring things too, like clutch control and those manoeuvres. They're boring but essential in order to be able to enjoy your driving experience safely. Let's think about socialising. We all enjoy people's company. From a very young age, babies like to be around other babies, but they need to learn the important communication skills, and whether that be facial communication, verbal communication, sign language, all of those social communication skills we need to learn and rehearse. And yes, it is boring when you're told to share and you want to be able to do things your way and you take the lead in the game when you're 3 and 4 years old. But those social communication skills are essential if they are going to enjoy socialising for many years to come. So hopefully then you can see that any element of anything we're learning to do has a fun element, that we want to get there and we have a purpose why we want to get there, but there's lots of crucial basic skills that we need to have along the way, and that is the same with reading. So phonics opens the door to that wonderful world of reading. It's the crutch that we all need to have, it's the skill we all need to have too. So when we are looking at books that will allow us to rehearse those phonetic skills of decoding and blending and all of those wonderful things to lead to that fluent reader, we need to choose books that are going to be beneficial in practicing those skills. So there is no point giving children a book with a few words in that are not phonetically decodable. All of the books need to be phonetically decodable so that the children can rehearse those phonetic skills. That is the purpose of the phonics lesson. That doesn't mean that every book they ever come into contact with whilst they are learning to read has to be phonetically decodable. What it does mean though is when they are looking at a book for the purpose of rehearsing those phonetic skills, the book must be phonetically decodable. So yes, those old Oxford Reading Tree books that we are feeling really bad about getting rid of, they are not fit for purpose when it comes to teaching children how to apply those phonetic skills to reading. So let's look, for example, at the text from that book I talk about all the time, The Pancake, which is a stage 1 Oxford Reading Tree book, and on the book it talks about being first words. So let's look at that book. This is a book we were giving to children who are at the beginning of their phonics journey, applying their phonics to reading. So let's have a look. The pancake, the frying pan, the flour, the eggs, the milk, the butter, the pancake race. Which word in there is phonetically decodable at that point? Okay, they could read pan. Okay, so they've read a book in their first stages and the only word they could decode was pan. Are they going to enjoy that process? No. So whilst we may be feeling sentimental about those Oxford Reading Tree books, just think of it as evolving and thinking about the fact that when we want children to rehearse those phonetically decodable, rehearse their phonics skills with phonetically decodable books, they need to have a book that's phonetically decodable. The Pancake is not phonetically decodable, and most of those early Oxford Reading Tree books are not phonetically decodable, so they're not fit for purpose. However, I have also been teaching a really long time, and I have taught many children to read using those kinds of books. And whilst I'm not sentimental about it, because I can see why we're changing our approach, I do understand for those of you who feel like, why are we changing this when we've taught so many children to read? The reason we're changing it is because there's a better way to do it. The reason you're sentimental about it is because you're a wonderful teacher who cares and wants to teach children to read. So if you are feeling sentimental, don't feel cross that it's changing. It just means you're a lovely, lovely teacher who's been celebrated giving the children the gift of reading. If you aren't feeling sentimental and are doing a happy dance that we're getting rid of the Oxford Reading Tree books, you're brilliant teachers too, because you can see that we are changing and evolving and giving the children what is best for them. Okay, so I've explained to you why phonetically decodable books are the best when we are thinking about the phonics skills that the children need to apply, but that doesn't mean that that's the only type of book that the children are going to access, because as I said at the beginning, there are lots and lots of different elements to teaching children to read. Okay, so when we teach, we need to think about the aim of what we are intending to achieve by the end of the session. So therefore, what is the best resource? So if we want children to rehearse their phonics skills within a phonics session and take those books home to rehearse their phonics skills, they need a phonetically decodable book. If we're doing whole class reading or guided reading or whatever format you teach your other reading skills, you need to think of a book that's going to be best for that. So if you're teaching comprehension skills, you're not really going to rely on a phonetically decodable book to do that. If you're teaching prosody, where you want the children to use their expression, intonation, all of those wonderful readers who just engage you, maybe you could use a phonetically decodable book for that, but you might model it with other books as well. If you're going to be thinking about retrieval, depending on the reading level of the book, the stage the child is at, you might use phonetically decodable books, but you might use other books as well. If you're thinking about prediction and inference, you're going to use texts that are going to engage the children. And then most importantly, above all of that, we want to nurture a real love of books. So are you going to use phonetically decodable books that have a very limited, if any, storyline whatsoever? Absolutely not. We are going to make sure that the children who are in the early stages, or adults in the early stages of the reading, have a real purpose. We need to show them how enjoyable books are. So for that, we're going to choose our favourite books, the newest books, the classic books, the traditional books, a wide range of books to share with the children so that they have that purpose, that end goal in sight. So they are going to want to take their boring, phonetically decodable book home and really master this reading skill, because they can't wait to pick up that Julia Donaldson book and read it all by themselves. So the reading for pleasure is all about giving the children, giving the early reader a real purpose in wanting to read. So yes, we need to think about the aim. What is the aim of this session? What are we trying to get the children to rehearse? What skills are they rehearsing? If it's phonics, it needs to be a phonetically decodable book. If it's one of the reading skills like inference, deduction, retrieval, we're going to think about which one of those we're practicing and choose a book. We're not going to practice all of those every session. We've got to think about that cognitive overload. We're going to make sure that we're focused. We are going to, if we're doing it for reading for pleasure, we are going to choose one of the most gorgeous, beautiful books that we could imagine. And we're going to make sure that they enjoy that book without pressure, without questioning. Just enjoy the book, engage in the book, be immersed in the book, talk about the book, but make sure they love it. So that's what I wanted to say about reading and books. We are not just going to go down the phonetically decodable route and then never touch any books. We are not going to worry about the fact that we are getting rid of some of those Oxford Reading Tree books that are not fit for purpose, those early stages where they can only read one word out of the whole book. They're not right. We don't want children to have that feeling. We're not going to feel bad if we want to hold on to some of those Oxford Reading Tree books with the later stages where that magic key starts to glow and there's more adventures. If you enjoy those books and there's children in your setting that enjoy those books, keep them, repurpose them, use them for comprehension, retrieval, prediction. Use those books for a different purpose, because let's remember that all books have a purpose. Don't lose sight of that. but we've just got to remember that as we find out more about how children learn and we refine and improve and reflect on our practice, it doesn't mean we have to feel sad and cross and angry about the fact things are changing. We want to reflect, we want to get better, because at the end of the day, if we can give children the gift of reading, that's what we need to put as our central focus, and not feel worried about the fact that things are possibly changing for the better. Don't lose sight of the fact that all books have a purpose. Let's make sure that we hold on to that.